Ever pondered which nations harbor the most impolite inhabitants? The answer might surprise you. In this world of ours, brimming with diverse cultures and people, we've taken on the task to uncover the countries that, unfortunately, rank high on the impoliteness scale. Now, don't get us wrong, every country has its share of impolite folks, but some nations just seem to have a higher concentration, according to travelers' experiences. We've sifted through countless travel stories, reviews, and anecdotes, and we've considered factors like respect for personal space, the quality of customer service, and overall friendliness, or lack thereof. We've also taken into account the locals' willingness to help strangers, or their tendency to push in a queue for a more comprehensive verdict. So, if you're someone who values courtesy and civility, this list might come in handy while planning your next adventure. Now brace yourselves as we embark on this journey of discovery, starting with the 10th country on our list. Kicking off our countdown at number 10, we find ourselves in Russia. Now before we dive in, remember that rudeness is often a matter of perception, and what we consider rude might be perfectly normal in another culture. That said, let's explore. Russians are known for their direct communication style, which can come off as blunt and even harsh to outsiders. They don't beat around the bush, and that's just how they like it. Then there's the lack of small talk. It's just not a part of their culture. Russians believe in meaningful and deep conversations, and they aren't too keen on chit-chat about the weather or what you had for breakfast. Also, don't let their stern demeanor fool you. Russians may not be all smiles all the time, but that doesn't mean they're rude. It's just their way of showing respect and seriousness. So if you're a fan of small talk and constant smiles, Russia might give you a bit of a culture shock. Next up, at number 9, we traverse to the land of the rising sun, Japan. This eastern gem is known for its rich history, breathtaking landscapes, and a culture steeped in respect and discipline. But to the uninitiated, some aspects of Japanese etiquette could come across as downright rude. For instance, silence is golden in Japan. Whether you're on a train, in a restaurant, or even at a social gathering, too much chatter is considered disrespectful. While this might seem standoffish to some, it's simply the norm here. Also, the Japanese value their personal space and minimal interaction. If you're used to friendly small talk with strangers, you might be taken aback by the lack of it here. But remember, it's not personal, it's just their way of respecting your space and time. So before you pack your bags for Japan, remember to brace yourself for a cultural shift. Remember, what might seem rude to an outsider could simply be a cultural norm within Japan. Moving on to number 8, we head over to the United Kingdom. This land of tea, castles, and the Queen herself might seem prim and proper, but don't let that fool you. The British are known for their dry humor and biting sarcasm, which might come across as rude to the uninitiated. It's not that they mean to insult or belittle, it's just a part of their cultural DNA. Another aspect that might seem off-putting is their reserved nature. The Brits value their personal space and privacy. They're not known for striking up conversations with strangers or being overly expressive. This can be mistaken for aloofness or coldness, especially by those from more outgoing cultures. But remember, it's all about perspective. These traits are merely a part of British culture. So if you're expecting overly friendly locals, the Brits might come off a tad aloof. Dropping in at number 7, we travel to the vibrant country of China, home to the Great Wall, the Forbidden City, and a culture rich in history and tradition. China is a sight to behold. However, it's also a place where the local customs may be a tad overwhelming for the uninitiated. For starters, in China, talking loudly is common. It's not that they're yelling at each other, it's just their normal conversation tone. To a foreigner, this may come off as rude or aggressive, but it's simply a cultural norm. Similarly, spitting in public and pushing in lines, which are considered rude in many cultures, are common occurrences in China. These actions aren't performed out of malice, but are deeply ingrained in the day-to-day life of the Chinese people. So if you're someone who values personal space and quiet, China might be a little overwhelming. But with the right mindset, it can be a memorable cultural experience. Next on our list at number 6, we find ourselves in the romantic land of France. Now, France is known for many things: its exquisite cuisine, its world-class art, and of course, its passion for love. But there's another side to this country that some might find, well, a little less than charming. The French are known for their directness, which can often be misconstrued as rudeness. They're not afraid to tell it like it is, and they don't sugarcoat their words. Some might find this refreshing. Others, not so much. Additionally, there's a perceived lack of friendliness, especially towards tourists. But don't let that discourage you. The French are fiercely proud of their culture and language, and while they may not always show it, they do appreciate when visitors make an effort to understand and respect their ways. Remember, the French value their language and culture, so a little effort can go a long way in breaking the ice. Cracking the top 5 at number 5 is the bustling nation of India. Now, India is a land of diverse cultures, traditions, and people. But there are certain aspects of Indian culture that some might interpret as rude. Take staring, for instance. It's not uncommon to find locals giving you a good, long look. But don't let this unsettle you. It's not intended to be invasive, but rather a cultural norm that can come across as uncouth to the unacquainted. Then, we've got the infamous Indian stretchable time. Punctuality isn't India's strongest suit, and being late is often brushed off as nothing more than a mild inconvenience. And let's not forget the queues, or rather, the lack thereof. Patience might be a virtue, but in India it's every man for himself when it comes to standing in line. So, if you're someone who values punctuality and personal space, India might be a bit challenging. Coming in at number 4, we arrive in the United States. With its iconic cities and vast landscapes, the US is a magnet for travelers. However, some of the quintessential American traits can be seen as a bit rude by visitors. Take, for example, the American penchant for being overly friendly. While it's done with good intentions, this can sometimes come off as insincere or even intrusive to those not accustomed to such enthusiasm. Then there's the volume. Americans are known for being loud, whether it's in conversation, laughter, or just expressing their opinions. This can be a bit jarring, especially in public places where quiet is generally preferred. Finally, there's the issue of personal space. Americans often have a different understanding of personal boundaries compared to other cultures. They might stand too close, touch too often, or ask overly personal questions. But let's not forget, the US is a melting pot of cultures. Remember, America is a land of diversity, so experiences can vary greatly from state to state. Now we're down to the top 3. At number 3, we have Germany. Germany, a country known for its precision, efficiency, and yes, its directness. Some might mistake this directness for rudeness. In German culture, honesty is highly valued, even if it's blunt. It's not uncommon for a German to give you their unfiltered opinion, even if it's not what you want to hear. Then there's the German love for rules and regulations. If you're someone who likes to bend the rules or go with the flow, you might find this aspect of German culture a bit off-putting. From following strict recycling guidelines to not crossing the street on a red light, even when there are no cars in sight, the Germans take their rules seriously. And let's not forget about the efficiency. Sometimes politeness takes a back seat to getting the job done quickly and correctly. So, if you're a free spirit who hates rules, Germany might feel a bit too strict. Just missing the top spot at number 2, we find ourselves in Italy. Many travelers are taken aback by the animated nature of the Italians. They are passionate, and this passion often spills over into their conversations. Their voices rise and fall dramatically, and to the uninitiated, it might seem as if they are constantly arguing. Moreover, Italians have a different understanding of personal space. They stand a lot closer than what most people are used to, and this can come across as intrusive. Then there's the Italian concept of time. It's more of a suggestion than a strict schedule. This laid-back attitude can be frustrating, especially if you're used to punctuality. So here's a heads up. If you're planning a trip to Italy, brace yourself for some loud conversations, close encounters, and a relaxed approach to time. So, if you value peace and quiet, Italy might be a bit too lively for your taste. And finally, taking the crown for the rudest country, we have Australia. Now, before you start shaking your head in disbelief, let's delve into the aspects of their culture that could be perceived as downright crude. Australians are known for their sarcastic humor, which some might find a bit harsh, especially if you're not used to it. Casual language is another hallmark of Aussie culture. Their propensity to call a spade, or in their case a bloody shovel, can come off as brusque. And then there's their infamous laid-back attitude. Yes, the Aussie no-worries mate approach to life can be misconstrued as indifference, especially by those who hail from more formal cultures. So, if you're someone who takes things very seriously, Australia might throw you off your game. But remember, rudeness is often a matter of perspective. What's considered rude in one culture may be seen as refreshingly honest in another.